Hey, nosleep. I've been a lurker on this sub for a while now, and this is my first ever Reddit post. Last night, I was at a New Year party, and I ran into some old friends from college. We were talking, and eventually, our conversation led to something that happened in our college days that you guys might find interesting. Before I get into this, I should probably tell you that throughout elementary and middle school, I had little to no social skills. Hell, even the other outcasts didn't want to be around me. Because of this, I was pretty nervous starting college since I didn't know anyone. Although, I was cautiously excited that I might finally be able to make some friends, since I now had a clean slate. Although when I walked into the main hall on our induction day, that idea quickly evaporated. By my final class, an introduction to my course in computer science, I was resigned to the fact that I was going to spend college alone. Naturally, I was sitting alone in the vacant back corner of the hall when Graham arrived. Now, Graham is the only person I met IRL that exceeds me in sheer beta-ness. When he arrived late, a habit that would remain throughout college, in a last-ditch attempt to spend the next stage of my life with someone, anyone, I offered him the seat next to me. As you can imagine, everyone else's seats were saved. He thankfully accepted my offer, and we would go on to become roommates. Now, Graham and I had a lot of things in common. We both loved video games, we both loved anime, and we were both die-hard introverts, although he was a lot worse than I was. Because of this, when the summer had ended and the first term was starting, we applied for a dorm together. Although honestly, it was less because we liked each other and more that we were each other's last resorts. We ended up in a dorm in a more modern building with a third roommate who had been accepted later than anyone else because of a complication in his application. That third roommate was Michael. Now, Michael was the exact opposite of me and Graham. While me and Graham were a bunch of betas talking computer science, Michael was an extremely laid-back guy talking PPE. He was also a massive stoner, but nonetheless, the nicest guy you've ever met. Naturally, we were suspicious of Michael, since he couldn't be any more different. Although we later found out he also enjoyed video games, something that helped us to connect. Now would be a good time for me to apologize for this wall of text where nothing much happens. But this stuff is very important to me. And I guess I wanted you to know what led to us finding that fucking Raspberry Pi in the wall of our dorm. The year is now 2015, and the past year had been great. We'd played a ridiculous amount of Sven co-op, and I've even smoked my first joint. You can guess who I got that from. 2015 was also the year that we purchased a router, so we wouldn't have to deal with our college's shitty Ethernet. It took me and Graham an hour to set it up, but was worth it. For the first week, everything was fine. The connection was fast, and we no longer had to use our mobile data on campus. Then one day, Graham told me that a foreign MAC address was on our network. Now would be a good time to tell you that Graham was super paranoid when it came to these things and was constantly telling us about how the government was spying on us, even before Snowden. So when a device that no one claimed ownership to was sitting on our network, he completely freaked out. And so he would shut up about it. I agreed to help him look for it. We borrowed an EMI near-field scanner from our IT department for a project, turned off all our electronics, and started looking. The annoying thing was that whatever it was would only release a short burst of activity for 10 minutes, so we had to set the router to turn on and off repeatedly so that we could trace it every time it reconnected, and we eventually narrowed it down to a set of drawers. However, the scanner's reading wouldn't increase no matter where we looked in the drawer. So in a last-ditch attempt to see if it was taped to the back of the drawers, we pulled it back from the wall, only to reveal a patch of unpainted plaster in the wall behind it. When we put the scanner next to the patch, the scanner's reading shot up. After a short debate over whether or not we were willing to smash a hole in the wall of our dorm, we decided that we'd gotten this far, and we had to see what was in there. Unfortunately, Michael walked in while Graham was ripping chunks out of the wall with a hammer, so we had to quickly explain the situation and that we weren't insane. When we had created a large enough hole, I put my hand in and pulled out a scrunched up bin bag. Inside was a Raspberry Pi connected to a LAN cable, which now didn't work since we'd stopped paying for the college's internet access, as well as a Wi-Fi adapter and a LAN to Wi-Fi adapter. Unfortunately, the home directory of the Pi's SD card was encrypted with Lux. However, due to the contents of the etc. folder, we could piece together more or less what the Pi was doing. Every 10 minutes, the Pi would send a message via IRC through an open VPN tunnel, presumably to a VPN server, which masked the destination. When the Pi's Ethernet connection stopped, the Pi used Aircrack NG to brute force access to our Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, when we reinserted the SD card and plugged in the Pi in order to further inspect its traffic, the SD card was wiped, presumably a security measure in case it was discovered. As you can imagine, we wanted to know who had put the Raspberry Pi in the wall of our dorm, so we asked our RA, a blonde girl who was utterly disgusted by me and Graham, who was in the room before us. She told us that the room had belonged to a Warren Daly, who had since left. When we found out about this, we did some research on Warren Daly, only to find that he had been declared missing. According to local paper archives in our library, a cliché, right? The last contact anyone had with him was a voicemail message he had left to his parents, where he told them that he was onto something, would have to go off the grid, and not to worry about it. According to the paper, he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia a year prior, and had been previously arrested for unlawful use of a computer, although the charges were later dropped. However, there's something I still haven't told you. When I told you that the Pi had brute forced our Wi-Fi, I wasn't entirely truthful. Graham had ensured that our router used WPA2 and a password that would take centuries for a computer to guess. When I realized this, I remembered that a LAN to Wi-Fi adapter had also been attached to the Pi. And when I looked at the ports of our router, I found a matching adapter. Meaning that either Graham or Michael was behind it. Although the fact that Graham, the only other person with the technical knowledge, was so eager to look for it, leaves only one terrifying alternative. When whatever the fuck that Pi was transmitting stopped, someone came into our dorm without our knowledge and attached the adapter to our router. A revelation that I never shared with anyone, although Graham must have also figured it out, since he was just as eager to switch rooms after that year as I was. But it gets weirder. Last night, Graham told me that his cousin had found another Raspberry Pi taped to the underside of the lid of his toilet cistern, again transmitting unknown messages to an unknown destination. Now I don't know if that was Warren's doing, or if someone else is involved, or even if it's just a coincidence or something. But if you live in Maine like we do, or even if you don't, I'd recommend you check for those raspberry pies. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, shoutouts, and much more, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. It's a place where you can help support my channel while getting awesome rewards in the process, and every pledge helps out a ton, no matter the size. So if you'd like to see all the rewards I offer and consider becoming a patron, it'd mean a ton to me if you'd click the link in the description and just check it out. And don't forget to show some love to the amazingly talented authors who make these narrations possible. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.